How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Syntho app. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you one of the most crucial parts of producing dance music, and that is effects. Effects are one of the most overlooked parts of producing dance music, and yet are one of the most crucial to giving your tracks the extra 10% and a more polished feel. I'll be explaining the why we use effects, where to use them, and also how you can make your own using only Ableton stock plugins. Let's get stuck in. So to show you the reason why we actually need effects in the first place, it's good to show you in context. So I have here one of my unreleased tracks, and I'm going to show you the difference it makes by having the effects with and without. And I'm going to show you rather in the most obvious place where you'd expect, like a build-up, because this is where a lot of people do remember to use their effects, but it's often in the other areas they seem to neglect them. So rather than just showing you a build-up, which most people have heard effects used in, I'm going to show you a less obvious place. And this is going to be part of my intro where I first bring in my bass line. So we're going to head over to the start of the section, and we're going to have a listen from this point here. So everything flowed quite nicely, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's also lacking a bit of depth. One thing we do know is that there's nothing to really let the listener know that something is about to happen. Whilst I'm using some of my percussion to let the listener know, beyond that, there is nothing else there. So if I unmute my effects, these are going to be the layers that let the listener know that the change is about to happen. So let's add them in and hear the difference it makes. Now instantly, that has got so much more impact and depth. Not only does it give my track a lot more of a polished feel, but there's extra character, and you clearly know when that change is about to happen. And this is why effects are so important. The point in having them in these key transitional areas is to help guide the listener. Whilst they shouldn't be the main focus, they're there to complement the key changes in your track. Again, most people have their effects only in their build-ups, and so they neglect all their other key transitional areas, which is often where we need the effects the most. Now, if I were to zoom out into my project, you'll see I've got these effects layers scattered all throughout. And what I'm doing here is I've created a 16-bar loop worth of effects that I can then repeat across the track. If I were to have the same little sweep every single time, eventually that will get quite repetitive and you could clearly hear that it's looping. But if I were to have a 16-bar loop worth of effects with enough variation, I can repeat that across the track without it getting boring. So for every change I have in my track, whether it be major, such as introducing a new sound or synth, or minor, such as introducing a small little layer, I have an effects layer to complement that change. It's always there to help guide the listener and help keep the flow of the track going. So as you can see here, we've got another section. I'm about to bring in the clap. And this effects sweep here is there to let the listener know that that change is about to happen. Again, when I'm about to bring in another synth, such as this stab, this is going to be complemented with some more short effects. Every single time I have a small change, the effects is there to complement it and guide the listener. If you're in doubt, make sure you have a small transitional effect every 8 bars. And technically, when it comes to being creative when you're producing, there are no rules, but it's a good surefire way to help guide the listener, give your track depth, and really improve the flow of your track by having a consistent amount of effects. I've even gone a step further by having some effects in between those 8-bar changes by using something called spot effects. And these are the more impact sounds that you just hear in the background that just have that little bit of engagement for the listener whilst you've got lots of repetition going on in the dance track. So you can see here, I've got these 2 effect sounds here and this one here. And these are small little whooshes and hits just to keep the track engaging whilst I've got lots of repetition going on. Because at the end of the day, dance music is just repetition, and you've got lots of things repeating and repeating. So what we need to do as a producer is try to keep the listener engaged whilst we've got all that repetition going on. And the effects is just a great way to easily do this. And really, all I'm doing is taking these short little sounds and adding some basic delays to them. That's all that sound is. But by adding a bit of ping pong delay and a bit of tight delay, you get this really cool, nice tone sound. The same applies for this other one. It's simply just a sweep with a bit of extra ping pong delay. And as you can see, across the course of 16 bars, I've got a nice flow of different effects layers to keep the listener engaged. They're complementing the transitions of my arrangement while also keeping the track interesting. And all I've got here is sweep, spot effects, sweep, spot effects, sweep. And then that can be repeated across the whole track. You can have as much or a little variation with your effects, but I'd strongly suggest to insert an effects roughly every 8 bars. So in this project, I'm working with samples, and there are a few little tricks we can do to help easily manipulate samples to get them sounding exactly the way we need them in our project. So I've got this really long sound here, and all I'm doing is applying a short fade onto it. You can see here, if I just extend this out, this is what it sounds like normally. And that's a little bit long for what we want, because the transitional effects want to be nice, short and sweet. We want the longer ones to happen more for the key changes, such as our build-ups or when we're introducing big parts of the track. But when we have those more subtle changes, we can just use the short effects to really help guide the listener. So all I'm doing is making sure that arrangement view is turned off, and then this will load up the ability to add fades to our samples. And you can just grab this top corner here in the top left, and click and drag this across, and you'll be able to apply a fade. This means you can easily choose the length and the way that the effects move to get it perfectly suited for your track. So to give you a quick and easy example of how we can manipulate effects, let's take another one and we can do a few things to it to get it sounding nice and exactly how we need it for those short transitional effects layers. So we're going to take this down lifter, but we want to turn that into a short transitional effect. So first thing we can do is reverse it. So we can either right click and hit reverse clip, or we can use the R button for the shortcut. And then now we've got this. That's still a little bit too long for the transitional areas. So what we can do is we can shorten it by selecting where we want. So let's just have it as a full bar. We're going to press Command and E to split it. We can delete the rest, and then making sure that the automation window is turned off, we can then open the fade area by hovering our mouse over it and then clicking and dragging across, and then we can choose exactly how long we want our effects to sweep in. And now you can see it's fading in nicely, and it creates this nice short and sweet effect sound. I'm also making sure that I've got some EQ and delay on, making sure there's no clashing low end, and also a little bit of delay just to give it a bit of space. Because otherwise, if I didn't have that on, it's just a little bit dry. So the delay is there just to give it a bit of extra depth and character and space. Now we have a nice effects layer to lead into the next part of the track. So now that we've obviously been working with samples to create those transitional effects for our tracks, but often we don't always have access to great sounds in sample packs. Either you're going to end up needing to invest in loads, or you're going to be spending hours and hours sieving through sample packs or Splice trying to find that perfect effect sound. But actually, the easiest way to do it is simply just create your own. This is going to give you so much more control lots more creative options, and also they're going to be ones that nobody else has because they're going to be unique to your track. And we can do this really easily using only Ableton stock plugins. So first of all, let's load up a brand new MIDI channel. We're going to head over to our instruments and operator. And whilst I'm using operator, you can actually use any other synth to generate white noise. So that's the first thing we're going to do, is we're going to set up the wave shape from sine to white noise. If you're not sure, white noise is every frequency played all at once. So this means you have lots of frequencies to play with when you're creating your effects layers. Now it's really important to remember, since you've got all the frequencies played at once, you've got lots of unwanted ones in there. So let's start by making sure we've got an EQ added, and then taking out all the unnecessary low end. This just means that when we play it, we've got this nice amount of mid and highs to work with. Now on operator, it does cut off some of the top frequencies. So all we need to do is simply turn off the filter. So we have this uncompromised white noise tone. Now the next step, which is the crucial part in how we get the sweep sound, and we're going to be loading up an auto filter. And if I were to hold down the tone and sweep through with the auto filter, you start to hear a little bit of the movement that we want for our effects tone, but we can push it a lot further. So the key to creating a sweep sound is actually boosting the resonance. So you can see this frequency boosted here, and the resonance is actually boosting the frequency we set our cutoff at. So when we then sweep through using the cutoff filter, it will then be sweeping through the frequency that is boosted. And this is what creates that classic sweeping sound. So if we boost it to maybe say 80% and then sweep through, you get that classic sweeping sound that we're after for an effects layer. Before we get a little bit further, it's sounding very dry, so we're going to make sure we add a little bit of delay just to give it that depth and character that we need on our effects. So let's turn on this ping pong delay, and I'm going to set it a nice tight one and just bring the dry wet down to maybe about 20%. So now if we have a listen,
join the next generation of house music creators with Syntho. It's time to take your music production to the next level. We've got everything from in-depth beginners courses to advanced mixing techniques. Syntho is your all-encompassing music education platform. Learn from some of the hottest world-touring DJs. It's your chance to unlock house music secrets from industry professionals. Get one-on-one feedback on your music with Syntho's bespoke feedback system.
These guys aren't biased to your track. They will tell you what you need and when you need it.
Use this to make fully finished tracks to send to labels and artists. It's now time for you to reach for the labels of your dreams. Get access to your favorite artists, tailored learning paths, and learn anytime. Head to our website now and turn your house music dreams into a reality.
and here it's got a lot more depth and it's not so dry in the mix. Now currently we have the filter type set to a low pass, and we can actually have a little bit of a nicer tone by using a different filter type. And we're going to be using the band pass. So this is in the bottom section here. You can see all the different filter types. So you have low pass, you have high pass, and the one we want is the band pass. And this means that it's got a specific band of frequencies that we're only working with. So it's taking out frequencies above and below the cutoff point. This means that we've got less of the unwanted frequencies from that white noise, and we can just focus on the main sweeping sound. So now that we have this band pass, let's have a listen. And it's a much cleaner sound because we've got less of the nasty and unwanted frequencies in there. And just like that, we've got the foundation for creating a really nice effect sweep. So let's have one drawn in. Let's create a new MIDI clip. And let's just put in this effect sweep, start to finish. And then we can draw in some automation. So let's just give this a little wiggle and draw in our automation. Maybe have it just below so then it sweeps in. Turn it down in the mix, and then now, and we can probably go a little bit lower than that. We don't necessarily need to go all the way to the very top, because those top frequencies can get a little bit harsh on the ears. So I think to get a really nice sound, we don't need to go too high for this. So maybe let's try 4.8K. A little bit higher. And as well, maybe we can get a more drastic curve on there. So for our automation, if we hold down the Alt key, you can get the option to change the curve type. So all we have to do is hold the Alt key and click and drag up or down to change the curve type. So let's have a slightly more drastic curve there. And let's change the ping pong delay. Okay, so we're going to set this to roughly 5K. I think that's a nice middle ground, not too much high end in there. And we're going to just drag and then pull this down to give it a nice curve. And there we have that nice sweeping effect. So there are a few things we can do to give this extra character and tone, and that'll be applying some other effects to it. So one thing we can do is we can apply things such as resonators. And what a resonator will do is pitch the effects in key with the track. So I know my track is in the key of E. So all we have to do is on the spectral resonator, we can click this little icon here to change it to be matching the key. Click and drag it down till we have it in key with the rest of our track. So now we have it into E. Instantly, that's got a bit more coolness, character, and tone to it. And this just goes to show by starting with a simple sound such as white noise and then adding color and texture to it, you have so much ability to craft it in the way that you want it to. So we can change this slightly by adding some of the chorus, change the decay, maybe adding some unison. You can even change it to something like a granular. The possibilities are endless, and this is just using the spectral resonator. You can also apply things such as flanger, phaser, and you can really go crazy with the audio effects to help get these transitional effects sounding cool and unique for your track. Another great tool of using the auto filter to create your effects using the white noise is actually also being able to apply an LFO to it. So we can start applying the LFO to the filter cutoff to give it a bit more movement. We're going to turn off the resonator and we're going to take the LFO and push the amount. So now if we play it, you can hear that it's got a bit of movement. But if we change the rate then, you start to create those really cool build-up laser effects. So now you can actually get some really cool manual sounding effects by mapping a few of these parameters to a controller, for example. So if I were to open up the mapping section by pressing Command and M, I can then select the rate of the filter. We can select the filter cutoff and apply that to another parameter. And then now, if I were to press play, we can create these really cool sweeping effects. So as you can hear, you can create these really cool effects by just moving 2 parameters. So now, as a little bonus tip, I'll show you an easy way to create your own effects library using only the sounds we've just made. So I've loaded up a brand new project and I've got the effects layer using the white noise generator loaded up as I've just shown you before. And one thing to do is also making sure if you press Control A and then press Command G, you'll be able to group it together. And this means then if you press the little save icon in the bottom left, you'll be able to save it so you can load this up easily every single time. Now that I've got this loaded up, I've again mapped the filter cutoff to my controller, and also I've got the LFO rate mapped to my controller. So now that I've got everything mapped up and ready to go, I'm just going to press record and create some weird and wonderful sounds. So you can do this for as long as you want. It can be a minute, it can be 10 minutes, and just have a bit of fun, just trying to create some different sounds using your effects. Because once we've got it recorded, we can then take it and chop it up and create a small sound library of samples we can use and drop into our tracks later on. So all we need to do is make sure we've got the MIDI set up. So I'm going to maybe take 33 bars of this. We're just going to insert a little dot here at the very start and then press the legato button to extend that for the entirety of that clip. And now the MIDI is set up, we can just press record and see what we get. So now that I've got that recorded, I can then have a look at the automation I've got here. You can see these are the things moving, and we'll cut it off, say, here. We don't need this. And all we have to do now is simply bounce this to audio, and we now have lots of effects layers that we can just easily chop up. So I'm going to turn off the delay because we can then just add up this on afterwards. And then I'm going to right click and then click freeze track. Wait for this to freeze, and then we can right click again and then click flatten track. And now we have the audio bounced and ready to chop up. All we have to do then is add our extra delay. So let's add this back on. Turn the dry weight down a little bit, and now we have these really cool effect sounds. So we can maybe stop it here, and then instantly we now have uplifter and a downlifter we can use in our tracks. And all we have to do then is simply save that into one little folder, and we can easily have access to some quality effect sounds to drop in our tracks. So hopefully you found this video useful and it's shown you how important effects layers are. It's crucial to not neglect them and make sure we've got them in our key transitional areas, not just for our build-ups, but also when we have those small little changes in our arrangement. They make tracks so much more interesting, they keep the listener engaged, and they just add that extra depth and give the track a more polished feel. If you found this video useful, make sure you drop me a comment below and also let me know what you want to hear from us next. I'll see you on the next video.